All right. It's on the right page and we're recording. So haven't heard that one before. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to start this morning with reading the daily word, and then I'll introduce Lily, our speaker today, and we'll then get on with the show. So Sunday, May 23rd, the word for today is faith. My faith keeps me focused on God. I may not be able to control what happens around me, but I am always free to choose what happens within me. My perception determines my experience. I begin with faith. I choose to see the vibrant wholeness that is present even during illness. I open my heart and mind to the harmony that I know is possible, even in the midst of apparent discord. When my needs appear greater than my resources, I remind myself all supply springs forth from the inexhaustible well of divine substance. I am reassured by remembering all situations are temporary and God is greater than every circumstance. Through my faith, I align my thoughts with the divine and believe in this truth that sets me free. If you have the faith of a mustard seed, you could say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. Luke 17:6. Good morning, I'm Susan, everybody. And we have as our guest speaker today, Lily Sandberg. I'm gonna put her on spotlight. So it's exciting to have Lily back again. Oh, I'm gonna mute everybody first, and that'll give Lily a chance to unmute. So you guys all are gonna be muted and Lily can unmute herself. Okay, so she is born and bred, grew up in Unity, and she served as the regional officer for the Youth of Unity program, as well as running weekend retreats for Uniteens. She graduated from University of New Mexico in 2018 with a BA in religious studies and a BA in sociology. She is finishing, excuse me, her second year of ministerial school through the Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute. And she will be starting an internship in the fall at Unity Church of Overland Park in Kansas. Her mission is to continue pushing the unity movement forward in new and creative ways, making space for all of us to remember and live from our inherently goodness to make lasting change in the world. So she's excited to be back with us, and I'm excited to introduce her to you. So let me put her on spotlight. Here we go. Okay, I give you Lily.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. It is so good to be back. I was thinking back, Sheila and Unity Church of Stockton was actually the first church that outside of my home church that invited me as a guest speaker. And so you all have a very special, tender place in my heart because Sheila and your community have been invested in my journey for a very long time. And so this is the 7th time I've actually got to guest speak with you all. And so it feels like coming home to be with you. So it's very excited to be back. And so my topic today, which I actually gave many months ago and was revisiting, is called Authenticity in Action. And the funny thing about giving a talk title many months in advance is sometimes you don't know where you're going to be and what's going to be the connection to that talk title. So when I was thinking about where I wanted to go, what I realized is there's so many pieces of authenticity that I feel like have gotten potentially some muddled. Authenticity right now is one of the buzzwords kind of outside of the spiritual realm and into self-help books. If you look on Amazon right now, there's like 100,000 books that have been written with authenticity in the title or as a primary focus. There are pages and pages of TED Talks. This is a way that people have been asking the question, why is it so hard to show up as who we are in our world today? Because that is the goal of authenticity. Authenticity at its core is being true to ourselves and true to our values within in every circumstance. And so the question I started asking myself was, what does that really look like for us? And why is this industry of authenticity growing by leaps and bounds in the last 10 years? And I think for me, just in doing some research and asking some questions and engaging in some conversations, what I have realized is that there has been a push for authenticity to be empowered to show up as we are in every moment, in every circumstance, in a world that doesn't always make space for that. How many times have we shown up with all of us and that wasn't welcomed, it wasn't received well, it wasn't appreciated, and it wasn't valued? The more times we show up in spaces where our authenticity is not valued and welcomed, the less likely we probably are to continue to show up in our authentic selves. But that is the work. That authenticity is not easy. Putting authenticity into action means the continuous motivation to show up as we truly are in the values that we believe in all the moments we possibly can. My day job is in mental health. I'm on the administrative side of things. And the thing we talk about very often is sometimes it doesn't feel safe for all of us to show up. That sometimes we have to guide with an idealized version of ourselves to fake it till we make it. Sometimes we have to lead with more of a timid version of who we are because we're sussing out the situation. Sometimes we show up as a very dull version of ourselves, trying to figure out, is it safe to be all of who I am? Are they prepared for all of who I am? Will I be welcomed in all that I am? And the push for authenticity also needs to be the push for other spaces to be authentic and to welcome us in that authenticity. And so, for example, for me, this past Friday, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I was running late. I didn't have food in my fridge. I hadn't packed my lunch in time. I was rushing into work. And then I just kind of walked into every single thing that could have gone wrong, went wrong. Ever have one of those days where it's just like thing upon thing upon thing? And so I just had to say, oh, today has not been my day so far. Not saying today for the rest of my day won't be my day, but so far acknowledging that it has not felt like today has been my day. And so what had happened is every Friday we come together in a staff meeting. And I was just not feeling it. We were being asked to be vulnerable and to share a piece of who we are and to connect to other people on our team. And I was in my own stuff. And I just had to say, you know what? I'm so sorry, partner. I know we're supposed to be doing this thing, and I am not the best version of myself today. So I'm going to do what I can. And I'm also going to acknowledge that I'm in a little bit of a bad mood. And all of that was allowed because I had built a relationship with this person of authenticity. That good days and bad days, we get to show up and just say it. And be real in it. That's a piece of authenticity, is that realness, not to deny circumstance, not to deny what we are feeling on the inside or what is happening on the outside, but knowing that authenticity is all of that. But I think what we do when we are spiritual people and when we are getting to be mature in our spirituality is that sometimes we fall back into the trap of negative emotions. And one of my true loves in this spiritual path that I am on and in school is being able to push the envelope a little bit. That's part of my soul call, is to say, I know we've been doing it this way. but is there a way that could be better? And one of the things that I have been really diving into and really pushing other people into examining for themselves is the concept of spiritual bypassing. The act of using our spiritual tools in an immature and inauthentic way to be able to misuse principles, to glaze over what we have coded as negative and just focus on the positive. But to deny those real pieces of us that are coming forward to be acknowledged and seen, but pushing them down because spiritual people aren't negative. And I'm trying to break down some of those beliefs because I do not think they serve us in this very human space. And so I've been diving into this book called Spiritual Bypassing. It's by Robert Augustus Matters. He's a PhD and he actually studies spiritual bypassing. So if this sounds interesting to you, it's a really great book. And the subtitle is When Spirituality Disconnects Us from What Really Matters. And so one of the chapters that I've been sitting with this past week is let's stop being negative about our negativity. And so he says, there isn't such thing as a negative emotion. There are negative things we do with our emotions, but our emotions themselves are neither negative nor positive. They simply are. He goes on to say later in this chapter, being negative about our negativity fragments us, stranding us from our unresolved wounds. Hurt, rage, grief, shame, fear, terror, loneliness, despair, and so on. All of these tend to get lumped together as negativity, as something far from spiritual. It's as if we have abandoned the child in us, fleeing that little one's pain, helplessness, and longing for safety and love in the name of the spiritual approach. But all we've really done is escape from the very pain itself. Our lack of intimacy from our anger, fear, shame, doubt, terror, loneliness, grief, and other painful states keep us in a superficial state of emotion, being able to be addicted to whatever helps us numb what we have called as negative. This is the whole thing about spiritually bypassing that I think is directly in conflict with authenticity. Is authentic is being able to feel our feelings. That was a really big thing in my house growing up. My mom's a social worker, and so I was really lucky to have space made for me when I was young, to be able to not only know that it was safe for me to feel my feelings, but be encouraged to feel my feelings. And many times when I was so upset and I just needed some space, I would yell at my parents, I just need some time to feel my feelings. And how often have we maybe needed to yell that in our adulthood, but never taken the time or the space for us to do that? That if authenticity is about being true to ourselves and our values, we have to be clear about what's happening in our internal world. And that is our feelings, that is our embedded beliefs, that is our opinions about others, that is our self-judgment, that is all of those things that we have decided, ooh, I don't want to look at that right now. Some of that shadow of who we are that I feel like is the key to unlocking where we are supposed to go, not only as a person, not only as a community, not only as a movement of unity, but in our world. That for so long, space has not been made for us to be authentic and ask the question, what's happening on the inside? And not just be able to ask the question and feel our feelings, but then to express those. That authenticity in action means that it doesn't just stick in the eternal, but we have to start there. So I know for me, and I can imagine for you, that when you may say something, or you may believe something, or a thought will pop into your head that is directly in conflict with who you want to be, who you are becoming, you have a physiological reaction. I know for me, when I slip into self-doubt, when I go into that spiral and I let my ego take over, telling me all of the falsities about my enoughness and my worthiness, I can feel that because my chest gets tight. And I know for me that when I am being inauthentic, when I say something that is not the truth of who I am, that is not the values I hold, I feel it in the pit of my stomach. That our bodies are wise and they are telling us things whether we want to believe them or not. And so when we are talking about authenticity in the eternal experience, we have to connect in with our body. Figuring out when I am in dissonance with my authenticity, showing up as who I am, how does that feel? And then on the flip side of that coin, figuring out when I am showing up exactly who I am in the moment that was tough, how does that feel too? The physiological and the emotional, because those two things are inherently connected. And for some of us, we have been taught that that is not important. That so many times in our world, we don't make space to feel our feelings because we have conditioned that our feelings aren't important. And that holds a belief for many of us that we are not important. And that is some of our work to start to break those beliefs down because they are not true and they do not serve us. And so the work of authenticity is starting on the inside and showing it on the outside. That one of the toughest things about authenticity is we have to put it into action. Just like our fifth unity principle, that the principles before it, we know that they are powerful and important, and we must put it into action. That is our call, that spirituality does not happen when we sit on our tushes and do not go into the world. We can start there, but we are pushed to go further. And so with authenticity, especially, we are called to show up. Show up when it's easy, and especially show up when it's hard. That the phrase of, I will speak the truth even if I am standing alone, that directly ties into our call for authenticity. And so one of those pieces that I am so encouraged by is being able to see that authenticity is a greater conversation. So when we start to say, I am showing up as my authentic self, saying some things that may be difficult for me to say and difficult for you to hear, we are consciously part of creating more authentic and safe spaces for other people. One of my teachers, Kelly Isola, says that we are called to create a brave space for people to show up with all of who they are and be brave to show that to us, because that takes bravery. It takes safety to be able to get to that point, and it takes bravery for us to show up in that. How many times in conflict, in friendships, in relationships, in workplaces, have we said, I'm not going to say my piece because I don't want to start conflict? It's pretty often because we've coded conflict, just like our emotions sometimes, as negative. Conflict is part of change. Conflict is pushing us into where we need to go. Conflict is being able to have tough conversations. Conflict is acknowledging that all of us are probably uncomfortable in this space, and we still have to do this work to continue moving forward. Conflict is not our enemy. Conflict is part of our catalyst. And as part of our authenticity, we could be part of conflict. Many times we are. When we are showing up as the version of ourselves, good, bad, and ugly that day in that moment, that may cause conflict for someone else. And the reminder that I need to hear a lot is that it's nothing to do with them. It is everything to do with me. That when I show up as authentic, the only thing I can control is myself and how I show up. I cannot control the response. I cannot control the circumstance. I cannot control what they are going to say, how they are going to feel. Everything about that is out of my control. And as someone who really appreciates control, it's tough. But that's the work of authenticity, is showing up. And the thing about authenticity is it also triggers some internal conflict at times. Because sometimes authenticity is conveniently used for us to stay stuck. When I say, this is who I am and this is what I believe, and I'm not willing to expand that, and I call that place of this is who I am and this is what I believe authenticity, it stalls my growth. That authenticity is all about being able to incorporate new information, new experiences, new beliefs, re-examining old beliefs, shifting our circumstance, shifting our perspective. And that continues to build how we can show up as more authentic, differently authentic for who we truly are and who we're truly becoming. Because the thing about life that I have learned in my few years on this planet is that change happens, regardless of if we like it or not. And so if change is happening, we can either jump on that bandwagon or we get stuck in the dust. And authenticity is part of jumping on that bandwagon and saying authenticity for me today will look very different for me next week, next month, next year. That we get to grow in our authenticity, and that is our right as people who can change. One of the figureheads, one of the primary voices on authenticity, particularly in being linked to vulnerability, is Brene Brown. And Brene Brown has a special place in my heart because she's not only a social worker, and I love social workers. I was raised by a pack of social workers. They're some of my favorite people in the world, but she also is data-driven in her beliefs. And coming from a sociological background of my education studies, I appreciate numbers because they tell us some things. And so the way that Brene Brown shows up and how she explains authenticity really rings a bell for me. And so one of my favorite quotes about authenticity that she says reads, "Authenticity is not something we have or don't have. Authenticity is a practice, a conscious choice of how we want to live. Authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen." That is authenticity. Making choices every day to be real and show up, to be honest, and to let our true selves be seen. One of the gifts of being able to work in mental health and in the practice that I'm part of is we get to work with kids and their families. And so 2 weeks ago, there was a client that was coming in, and, just my piece is to be another safe adult who sees you at my job for these kids. And so I said, "Hey, how are you?" And, it's one of these teens that I've known for many years. And he turned around and he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "I'm having an okay day, but I'm realizing it's really scary to be seen." Heck yeah, it's really scary to be seen. When all of the walls that we have put on, all of the masks that we have put on, all of those things come down, and just the truth of who we are shows up, that is scary. And how wonderful that we get to be part of a world that makes space for us to discover this earlier and earlier in our lives, so we do not have to live many, many decades and then have this spiritual awakening of what it means to be authentic, of what it means to be seen. What a gift. Thank you for being part of this movement, part of this world, to be able to not only see each other in who we are, but make space for us to continually be seen, and for our kids to feel that same way. That's one of the greatest gifts that Unity and my home community gave me, is I know and I can clearly call out spaces where I am not seen in my authenticity. And that is the work I get to do, is make those spaces. better for the next person. And we each have that sphere of influence. And so I invite you this week to ask the question, where are the spaces I can grow in my authenticity? Where are the spaces I could change to allow for more authenticity in myself and others? Because that is the work we get to do. We get to start with us, and we get to bring it to the world. And we cannot start bringing it to the world until we do this internal work, and the eternal work calls us to go out. It is not easy. It will not always be fun either. But with people around you who are also part of this, it is good and important work. Thank you for being part of this good and important work. Namaste.